When a woman turns inward, tending her soul like a sacred flame, the world shifts. Her silence speaks louder than chaos. She no longer chases, she chooses. In stillness, she listens. In peace, she blooms. And like rivers carving canyons without noise, she shapes a life too solid to shake. A woman's inner strength is not loud. It does not march with banners or beg to be seen. It dwells deep, like roots beneath ancient trees, hidden but holding everything upright. This strength isn't granted by applause or external approval. It is forged quietly, moment by moment, often in the shadow of adversity. It grows when no one is watching, when the world turns away, and she must lean on herself like a crutch and a compass. It is the kind of strength that knows how to bend without breaking, how to kneel without surrendering, how to bleed without ever showing the wound. A woman's strength is not the kind you measure with the volume of her voice or the size of her victories. It is the kind that wakes up at dawn after a sleepless night, still believing in the possibility of light. It is in the way she carries grief in one hand and grace in the other, the way she can hold the weight of expectations on her shoulders and still walk with elegance, with the sway of someone who belongs to herself. Even when the world tries to write her story for her, she returns to her own pen, her own page, her own name. This strength isn't taught in schools. It doesn't come wrapped in praise or titles. It comes from being told you can't and choosing to anyway. It rises from disappointment like steam off a hot street. It builds in silence, in those moments when she is counted out, talked over, ignored, or underestimated. That's where the iron forms in the fire of being dismissed. She learns not to cry for recognition, but to become undeniable in her presence. A woman focused on herself is a force untamed. She is not selfish, she is sacred. She stops pouring herself into cups that never held her. She no longer explains why she won't shrink to fit the room. She plants her feet in her own space, waters her mind, prunes her soul, and waits for nothing but the seasons to turn. She does not need to scream to claim her ground. Her silence does the talking. Her boundaries are no longer fences. They are fields where she grows undisturbed. And as she grows, she glows. Not for them, but for her. She turns the light on inside, and suddenly she sees everything clearly. Who she is, what she deserves, what she no longer has to carry. She starts shedding masks like old skins, shedding expectations like rusted chains. She does not ask for permission to be whole. She simply becomes it. And when she speaks again, if she does, it is not to please or explain, it is to declare. She learns that her energy is not a resource to be mined by others. She guards it like treasure. She stops asking the world to make room for her and begins building her own rooms with walls made of truth and windows wide enough for the sun. There is no begging, no performing, no pleasing, only choosing, only becoming, only blooming. There is strength in the quiet, in choosing silence not from fear but from fullness. A woman does not always need to respond to everything hurled at her. Her stillness does not mean surrender. It means she has heard it all before and it no longer rattles her. She has walked through fire. She does not flinch at sparks. This kind of inner strength will not be written into headlines. It will not always be seen, but it will be felt. In the way she enters a room without needing to dominate it, in the way she leaves things behind without turning bitter, in the way she protects her joy like a birthright, not a reward, in the way she lifts others without losing herself. She becomes an anchor, not an echo, a foundation, not a fixture. And one day, without ever shouting, she notices. Everything begins to fall into place. The chaos outside can no longer reach the peace she built within. The noise of others' opinions fades beneath the rhythm of her own truth. The world rearranges itself around the quiet certainty of her self-respect. She is not chasing anymore. She is attracting. She is aligned. She is enough. She has always been enough. Silence is not the absence of voice. It is the presence of wisdom. A woman who chooses silence does not do so because she has nothing to say, but because she has learned the value of when to say it. In a world that demands constant explanation, where noise is confused with truth, she chooses stillness over spectacle. Her silence is a language, fluent in discernment. It is a knowing glance, a closed mouth, a calm breath when provoked. It is not weakness. It is restraint, carved by experience and curated by strength. A wise woman understands that not every invitation to argue is worth accepting. Not every wound requires a public bandage. Not every injustice needs her voice to validate its wrongness. She has seen the cost of giving her energy to those who only seek to drain it. She has felt the exhaustion of explaining herself to those who already decided not to understand her. Silence becomes her shield, her sanctuary, and her sharpest response. It says, I see you, I hear you, but I do not need to perform for you. There is power in a woman's silence, the kind that shifts rooms. It unsettles those who mistake loudness for relevance. It unnerves those who expect her to justify her boundaries, her choices, her peace. In her silence is a mirror. It reflects back the noise of the world, exposing how chaotic it truly is. She no longer competes in the race of who can speak the fastest or argue the longest. She knows that quiet confidence can silence a room louder than any speech. Silence also becomes her teacher. In the stillness, she listens, not just to others, but to herself. She hears her intuition clearer. She uncovers the whispers of her desires, the warnings in her gut, the dreams buried beneath distraction. When she stops filling the space with explanations and excuses, truth rises. Truth has always been patient, waiting behind the curtain of chaos. It cannot be heard over shouting. It does not fight to be seen. But in silence, it arrives like dawn, slow, certain, and undeniable. A woman grounded in silence becomes intentional. She speaks only when the words matter, when they serve rather than scatter. She no longer fills silences out of discomfort. She lets them breathe. She lets them stretch. She understands that silence can disarm, can heal, can transform. It gives space for others to reveal themselves, to show their truth without interruption. And in that space, she decides, not emotionally, but intuitively, what is worth responding to, what is worth preserving, and what is better left unspoken. In silence, she sheds the need for external validation. She doesn't need to post every thought, defend every decision, or narrate every part of her life. She does not owe anyone her inner world. Not every process needs to be made visible. Not every victory needs applause. She understands that some growth is sacred, some strength is silent, and some beauty is best bloomed in private. The silence she chooses becomes an act of radical self-respect. It says, I am not hiding, I am honoring. People will misunderstand this kind of silence. They will project insecurity onto it. They will say she is cold, detached, or distant, but she does not bend to their discomfort. She knows her silence is not void, but fullness. It is the fullness of having nothing to prove, the fullness of peace, the fullness of knowing that wisdom often speaks last, and sometimes not at all. She does not fear being misunderstood by those unwilling to understand her. She does not fear being forgotten in a world that mistakes noise for worth. There is a sacred kind of woman who chooses silence not out of fear, but because she has made peace with herself. Her silence is not a retreat. It is a return to center, a return to clarity. A return to her own voice before the world told her how to use it. And when she does speak, her words do not seek to dominate. They aim to land like medicine, measured, meaningful, and meant. She is not silenced. She is sovereign. And in her sovereignty, she lets silence do the heavy lifting. It protects her peace. It preserves her power. It prepares her for what truly matters. And those who recognize the weight of her silence will also understand the strength it takes to carry it. There comes a time in a woman's life when she looks at everything she has given, everything she has endured, everything she has put before herself, and realizes that the most radical act of healing is to choose herself first. Not out of arrogance, not out of rebellion, but out of survival. For too long, she was conditioned to believe that selflessness was the crown she must wear, that giving until empty was noble, that love meant sacrifice and care meant always putting herself last. But one day, quietly, gracefully, she decides, I will not betray myself to keep others comfortable. Self-prioritization is not selfishness, it is reclamation. It is remembering that her needs matter, that her time matters, that her peace is not a luxury, it is a right. She stops apologizing for needing rest, for needing space, for needing joy. She begins to unlearn the praise of burnout, the illusion of being everything to everyone. She starts asking, what do I need? What makes me whole? What does it mean to choose me, even if no one claps when I do? When a woman begins to put herself first, it shakes the foundations of the roles she's been taught to play. The caretaker, the fixer, the always available one. But she knows that roles are not identities, and she is more than what others expect her to be. She no longer stretches herself to fit someone else's story. She becomes the author of her own. She sets boundaries not to push people away, but to stay close to herself. She says no, not because she is cold, but because she is clear. The world may not know what to do with a woman who is no longer willing to disappear for others, but she does not owe the world an explanation. She owes herself a home within her own body, her own mind, her own heart. She wakes up in the morning and tends to her soul the way she once tended to everyone else's needs. She nourishes herself without guilt. She stops waiting for permission to feel good. She gives herself the grace she so easily gives away. She knows now that she cannot pour from a cup that stays empty, that love born from depletion turns bitter, that being everything to everyone leaves her being nothing to herself. So she reclaims her time. She says yes to solitude, to slowness, to softness. She reclaims her laughter, her creativity, her curiosity. She makes space for what delights her, for what restores her. She stops chasing people who don't see her and starts building a life that reflects who she really is. When a woman prioritizes herself, she stops settling. She no longer calls crumbs a meal. She no longer finds comfort in being chosen by those who treat her like an option. She walks away, not in anger, but in truth. She no longer needs to be needed to feel worthy. She no longer fears being alone because she has made herself her own best company. Her solitude is no longer emptiness, it is elevation. She understands that she is allowed to grow beyond what others remember of her, that her evolution is not betrayal, it is her birthright. So she lets go of who she was to become who she is meant to be. She no longer shrinks herself to stay digestible. She expands. She takes up space. She speaks with a voice she no longer mutes. She dresses how she pleases, walks like the ground was made for her, and loves herself out loud. Self-prioritization teaches her the art of discernment. She no longer says yes out of obligation. She no longer stays silent to keep the peace. She realizes that peace without honesty is just performance. So she starts being honest with others, but most of all with herself. She holds herself accountable, not to shame, but to growth. She embraces her own needs with tenderness, with conviction, with the courage of someone who has finally learned that loving herself is not a backup plan. It is the foundation of everything. The more she chooses herself, the more aligned her life becomes. The chaos begins to quiet. The people who never truly saw her fall away. The opportunities that once felt like fantasies begin to show up because she is now living from a place of worth. She no longer chases love, she attracts it. She no longer begs for belonging, she embodies it. And in every small act of self-care, self-respect, and self-assertion, she writes the new story of her life, one where she is not an afterthought. She is the beginning. There is a moment in a woman's journey when she grows tired, not from the weight of the world, but from the performance she's been conditioned to maintain, the smile when she's exhausted, the agreement when she wants to say no, the endless effort to prove, to please, to present a version of herself that fits into someone else's comfort zone. It is a performance written by expectation and upheld by fear. Fear of being seen as difficult, ungrateful, unlovable. But then something shifts. Quietly, powerfully, she begins to choose peace over performance. Choosing peace means she no longer lives for the approval that once fed her but never sustained her. She begins to see that performing for others has cost her herself. Every time she stayed silent to keep the peace, she felt herself disappear a little more. Every time she pushed past her own boundaries to meet someone else's standards, she betrayed the whisper within that said, "This is not who you are." And now she listens. She listens to the whisper before it turns into a scream. She listens to her body when it says, "Rest." She listens to her spirit when it says, "Let go." Peace is no longer negotiable. It becomes her compass. She stops proving her worth through exhaustion. She no longer wears busyness like a badge. She no longer explains her decisions to those committed to misunderstanding her. She does not perform femininity, strength, or success on command. She simply is, soft when she chooses, sharp when she must be, still when the world demands motion. She realizes she has nothing to prove to anyone who sees her only through the lens of what she can offer or endure. In choosing peace, she no longer sacrifices her truth for the illusion of being liked. She understands that not everyone will applaud her boundaries. Some will call her selfish, others will call her cold. But she has learned that peace rarely looks like agreement. It looks like alignment. She aligns with herself first. And if the cost of that alignment is someone else's discomfort, so be it. She refuses to keep paying for peace with her silence. This peace is not passive. It is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of clarity. It is fierce in its softness, unapologetic in its quiet. It says, "I do not have to perform to be loved." It says, "My worth is not measured in productivity or perfection." She no longer feels the need to hustle for belonging. She belongs to herself now, and that belonging cannot be revoked by anyone's opinion or expectations. There is a stillness that settles in her when she stops performing. She breathes deeper. She sleeps better. She laughs more freely, not for show, but from a place that remembers joy. Her presence is no longer wrapped in presentation. It is rooted in presence. She does not pretend anymore. She does not hide the truth of her feelings just to avoid awkwardness or keep the room comfortable. If it makes others uncomfortable, they are free to leave. She is no longer performing to make them stay. Choosing peace teaches her the beauty of living with intention. She begins to ask, does this add to my peace or take from it, before saying yes? She starts making space for slowness, for rituals that nourish rather than exhaust. She no longer forces herself to smile through pain. She does not push herself to attend every event, answer every message, or please every person. Her no becomes a sacred act. Her yes becomes a gift, not an obligation. She knows now that the world may praise the woman who performs well, but it will never protect her peace. So she builds that peace for herself every day in small and powerful ways. in the way she wakes without rushing, in the way she speaks to herself gently, in the way she honors her energy. She is no longer a show. She is a sanctuary, a quiet, whole, unshaken self who has finally remembered that she was never meant to be everything for everyone. She was meant to be herself for herself. There is a deep and quiet power in a woman who aligns with her purpose. It is not always a loud arrival or a sudden revelation. Sometimes it is a slow awakening, a remembering, a returning to the truth that was always inside her. For too long, she may have lived in roles shaped by others, shaped by tradition, by fear, by what was expected of her. She may have spent years chasing dreams that weren't hers, climbing ladders that led nowhere her soul wanted to be. But when alignment with purpose begins, it changes everything, not in chaos, but in clarity. A woman aligned with her purpose does not rush. She understands now that purpose is not performance. It is not always found in titles or timelines. It is often found in listening to what stirs her spirit, to what gives her peace, to what she would do even if no one noticed. Purpose is not always grand or loud. Sometimes it is quiet work. Sometimes it is just being who she truly is without apology. It is the art she makes in silence, the way she holds space for others, the words she writes that heal herself first. There is a kind of calm that settles in her spirit when she stops forcing what doesn't fit. She no longer wears ambition like armor. She no longer moves just to be seen. She moves in rhythm with herself, with her inner knowing. The opinions that once shaped her decisions lose their weight. The pressure to be everywhere, do everything, please everyone, fades. She becomes more interested in meaning than in metrics, more grounded in intention than in image. She stops asking, will they like me? And starts asking, is this true to me? Alignment with purpose does not mean everything becomes easy, but it means everything becomes clearer. Even the hard things feel worth doing. Even the setbacks come with lessons that serve her path. She stops envying other people's journeys because she trusts her own. She sees now that purpose is not a destination, it is a direction. And every time she says no to what drains her and yes to what lights her up, she is walking in that direction. She no longer needs to explain the shape of her path to those who can't see its vision. She is no longer willing to compromise her peace for approval. She is no longer willing to shrink to fit the mold. She does not hustle to be chosen. She chooses herself, and that choice becomes her compass. Her values lead her. Her passion fuels her. She does not chase purpose. It rises to meet her when she becomes still enough to listen. The more she honors herself, the more aligned her life becomes. Opportunities begin to flow, not from force, but from resonance. The right people find her. The right doors open. The right seasons come. There is a magnetism to a woman in alignment. She does not demand attention. She commands it by existing in her truth. She does not seek validation. Her presence is the evidence. She carries a grace that can't be imitated because it is rooted, not performed. Her work reflects her soul. Her choices reflect her clarity. Her relationships reflect her growth. Everything around her begins to mirror what is within her. And if something no longer fits, she does not cling. She lets it fall away, trusting that what is meant for her will never need to be forced. This alignment gives her freedom. Not the freedom to do anything, but the freedom to do what matters. She is no longer busy. She is intentional. She is no longer restless. She is ready. She is no longer scattered. She is steady. She realizes she does not need to chase the light. She is the light when she honors her calling, when she says yes to what aligns and no to what distracts. She does not ask the world for permission. She gives herself full access to her purpose. Each day she chooses to live with direction. Each day she chooses to show up as the woman she's becoming. And the more she does, the more the world around her begins to shift. She is no longer at war with herself. She is at home in her choices. Her voice becomes stronger, her steps become firmer, and everything that once felt scattered, confusing, unreachable begins to make sense. Not because everything changed, but because she did, because she returned to herself, because she stopped looking outside and started listening within. There is a quiet, unwavering power in stillness. A woman who learns to be still, truly still, not frozen in fear but grounded in awareness, holds a force that does not need to shout to be felt. The world teaches her to hustle, to move fast, to always be seen doing something. It tells her that action is power and that silence is weakness. But she comes to understand that stillness is not the absence of motion. It is the presence of mastery. It is the choice to be rooted when the world is pulling in every direction. She discovers that stillness is not stagnation. It is strength in its most patient form. It is the refusal to react out of urgency, the decision to breathe before responding, the wisdom to observe before moving. In stillness, she begins to feel her center. She begins to hear herself think, to feel what she has been numbing with noise, to connect with the truths that live beneath distraction. She no longer panics when nothing seems to be happening. She knows now that growth can be invisible and powerful at the same time. She understands that rest is not laziness, it is strategy. A woman who learns to be still is a woman who is not ruled by chaos. She no longer lets every provocation stir her peace. She does not chase every conflict, every comment, every demand for her attention. She chooses when to speak, when to act, when to walk away. Her restraint is not hesitation, it is discernment. Her calmness is not passivity, it is presence. She does not need to convince anyone of her worth. Her stillness declares it. In stillness, she becomes deeply connected to herself. She is no longer swept away by the noise of the world because she has found a deeper sound, the sound of her own intuition. It speaks softly but clearly, and in the silence she has carved out, she can hear it. She can feel which direction to go. She does not rush the decision because she knows timing is part of truth. She trusts that what is for her cannot be lost if she remains in alignment with herself. Her stillness is not waiting, it is preparing. Others may mistake her stillness for inaction, but she knows better. She is not idle. She is cultivating. She is listening, healing, planting. She is moving inward even as she appears unmoved on the surface. She watches how others move, not to judge, but to learn. She studies the landscape before she chooses her next step. When she does move, it is not out of desperation, but intention. Her steps are fewer, but more powerful. Her energy is not scattered, it is focused. And with that focus, she becomes a force. This power is not loud, it doesn't need to be. She no longer seeks to control everything around her. She controls her breath, her tone, her presence, her choices. And because of that, nothing outside of her can unseat her. She knows how to retreat without running. She knows how to be still without being stuck. And she knows how to be present without being pulled. Stillness teaches her resilience. In stillness, she has faced herself. She has sat with pain without numbing it, with confusion without escaping it. She has learned to befriend discomfort, to find the lesson in the waiting, to trust the process even when it is invisible. She has come through storms not because she ran from them, but because she stood still in them long enough to understand their purpose. She no longer fears the quiet, she welcomes it. She knows that in the quiet, she hears her own truth louder. She is not lost when things slow down, she is found. She is not anxious when things are uncertain, she is anchored. She no longer equates speed with success. She does not need to keep up. She needs to stay centered, because from the center, everything becomes clear. And from clarity, all things are possible. A woman in stillness is a woman in control, not of others, but of herself. She does not need chaos to feel important. She does not need constant motion to prove she is progressing. She knows that sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all, to stay, to breathe, to hold, to trust. That is where her power lives. Not in the noise she can make, but in the calm she can hold. Not in how fast she moves, but in how deeply she is rooted. Not in how much she does, but in how fully she knows when to be still. Unshakable grace is not something a woman is born with. It is something she earns through the fire. It is not the delicate, polite kind of grace that bends to please and smiles through pain. It is the kind that rises again and again with dignity that does not depend on how the world treats her. It is built slowly, shaped by disappointment, refined by patience, and strengthened by every moment she chose not to lose herself when she had every reason to. Her grace is not fragile, it is forged. A woman who walks in unshakable grace has known what it means to be misunderstood. She has been underestimated, overlooked, spoken over, and still she did not let bitterness take root. Not because it wasn't tempting, but because she knew her power did not live in retaliation, it lived in preservation. She does not fight every battle. She does not chase down justice with desperation. She trusts that what is meant for her cannot be stolen. She lets people walk away if they must. She lets moments pass that do not serve her peace. She holds herself steady, not because she has to, but because she chooses to. Her grace is not for performance. It is not a mask to hide behind. It is the armor she wears when she could easily harden, but doesn't. When the world gives her reasons to collapse, she stands with softness that refuses to turn cruel. She speaks without venom. She listens without losing herself. Her presence carries weight, not because she demands it, but because she has lived through enough storms to know which ones are worth weathering. Her grace is not submission, it is sovereignty. It is not silence out of fear, it is silence born of discernment. She has learned that being graceful does not mean being passive. It means being powerful enough to remain kind when kindness is not returned. It means walking away without slamming the door. It means setting boundaries without the need to punish. It means offering compassion, not because others deserve it, but because she refuses to be reduced by their actions. Her grace is not given because she is weak. It is given because she is free. Unshakable grace gives her the ability to pause. When others rush to speak, she pauses. When others rush to judge, she pauses. She no longer feels the need to defend herself in every conversation, to correct every misperception, or to prove her worth to those who can't see it. She lets truth do its work slowly, faithfully, without forcing anything. She walks in her truth, and that is enough. She is no longer moved by every opinion, every wave of chaos, every sudden shift. She is anchored, not to approval, not to applause, but to who she has become. She carries herself differently. Her posture is one of knowing, not arrogance, but assurance, not pride, but peace. She knows her flaws and she holds them gently. She knows her strength and she wears it humbly. She has nothing to prove. She has already survived what others may never see. Her grace is not dependent on the moment. It is a reflection of her maturity. It is the way she chooses to respond instead of react. The way she keeps her head high even when her heart is heavy. There is elegance in her endurance, a quiet beauty in the way she keeps showing up. She may fall, but she does not stay down. She may cry, but she does not crumble. She may feel pain, but she does not pass it on. Her grace makes space for both her softness and her strength. It does not deny the struggle. It carries it with lightness. She does not let suffering define her, but she does not hide from it either. She uses it to deepen her compassion, to widen her wisdom, to become even more rooted in who she truly is. And through it all, she remains unmoved in the ways that matter most. Life may test her, people may fail her, but she holds her integrity like a flame in the wind, guarded, glowing, unyielding. She does not shrink when things fall apart. She expands. She does not shout to be seen. She is seen because she is steady. Her grace is not a reaction. It is a reflection of the inner work she has done, the forgiveness she has offered, the love she has learned to give herself. That is the essence of unshakable grace, the refusal to be anything less than whole, no matter what the world tries to take. She is not untouched by the world. She is transformed by it. And yet, she remains intact, untamed, graceful still. When a woman chooses herself, her peace, her purpose, her silence, her stillness, she becomes unstoppable. No longer defined by noise or need, she rises in quiet power. Everything aligns not because she forces it, but because she is aligned. And in that sacred space, everything begins to fall beautifully into place.